Brewtallyspeaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. And now, on to the show.
Say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to day 6 of the 500th episode week of the Brewtallyspeaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this guest is Alfonso Civile. I have been saying that wrong for so long. I guess I just never realized that until I heard Alfonso on something recently, and someone goes, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, and it was funny that he said that, and I was like, I always thought it was like a eclectic way to spell Civile, essentially. And I guess blame my dumb brain and not realizing how to enunciate the vowels there in his name, which, to be fair, I've talked quite a bit, you know. East Coast and Midwest brain kind of just will take over sometimes and make me say really wild shit that's not correct at all. And this is one of those prime examples, but this is something that when I was doing this, you know, again, Alfonso's been on the show a few other times for completely different reasons. The last time, you know, we were talking sort of about what I deem to be sort of one of the bigger problems in hardcore and heavy music now is sort of this gatekeeping segregation, literally and figuratively, of people. Like, oh, well, we don't fuck with you, so you're not allowed to be a part of this because we said so. And it's like, hardcore is supposed to be an inclusive, and like heavy music is supposed to be inclusive. So to watch my friend go through something that I felt was a targeted attack kind of on a lot of things that I have seen over the years, where it's like I can't sit by and not use the platform that I've built to kind of discuss these things. And, you know, he was willing to come on and talk about something serious to both of us. And this one is a little bit more interesting because I kind of got to know more about Alfonso, and, you know, something I've never really discussed with him, and it just kind of hit me in real time during the conversation, was representation in music. You know, we often see, and something, you know, I've learned over the years, especially working in retail and stuff, is, you know, a lot of times you'll hear the sentiment of people want to see themselves in these things, whether it's the art you take in, or, you know, if you go somewhere to shop, like, you want to make sure that you're kind of like, oh, like, I feel seen and represented here. And I never really thought about how that applied for Alfonso being in a band, especially in the early 90s or so, coming from Puerto Rico to then living in Miami to then living in Michigan, where it's like, some of that, it's like, what was it like for him to grow up and be a fan of this emerging style of music, but also to see someone like Chino Moreno of Deftones, to see Max Cavalera of Sepultura and Soulfly eventually, and seeing sort of this, seeing himself up there, that it seemed plausible. And I don't think we really think about that maybe from a, and I'll say it like this, and it may ruffle someone's feathers, I don't give a shit, I'm old and it just kind of is what it is, I'm stuck in my ways sometimes, but, you know, to see a predominantly white genre of music, to have representation where you felt like it wouldn't be impossible for me to start a band with my friends, and that someday I could be signed to a label, that I could be on MTV. And I've never asked him that before, so it was really cool kind of getting to talk to someone I've known arguably. I mean, as I'm sitting here literally thinking about it, I probably was like 18 or 19 when I first met Alfonso. So that would have been, 23, 24 years ago at this point. To have him be such ensconced in so much of me, finding myself, finding my people in my local scene at the time, living in Lansing, to finding and wanting to play in shows, and that, sort of the thing I'm literally getting at. I'm just kind of having an epiphany that it's like Alfonso kind of was that for me, was one of those parts of that for me. The other part was a local band from here in Grand Rapids that I think we ended up talking about in this conversation, this band Camilla. And it basically was No Life and Camilla that made me realize, like, you can do this, and was the first to really make me understand that a local scene is kind of as important as the national touring bands that you hear on the radio back when you could, because you could open for those, and it would literally and figuratively open some doors for you. And yeah, it's crazy. Now I'm literally sitting here thinking about it and just thinking about how much, looking back, like, Alfonso has been such a part of my journey through all of this. It's crazy. But all of that said, this is kind of a longer episode. This is already getting kind of long. So let's get into my conversation with Alfonso, and I'll talk to you on the other side of it. Well, there is a slight funny thing, about doing this as of today when we're doing this, because you were supposed to be the last of the 500th episodes, and I wasn't gonna feels like I wasn't gonna get into them kind of like Christmas, where it's like, oh, I don't want to get into my presents early and all that stuff. But some things happened today as I'm recording this, and presumably I'm about to probably break the internet for a couple hours or maybe a day after this chat's done.
Well, you deserve to break the internet in all the good ways.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm sure somebody will inevitably. It's the internet, so someone will have something bad to say and be shitty. But that even goes back to one of the last times you were on, which was I was even just telling the story the other day, because Furnace Fest is coming up. And the Callous Cowboys are they've really kind of broke in the since then. And I was telling someone oh, it's so weird. It's not that I hate that band or I really hate Furnace Fest. I just kind of hate the community at times, which goes to the bigger talking point of hardcore metal and stuff. Sort of this elitist gatekeepy thing where I was my friend's band was winning a battle of the bands thing outright, not through any devious we're spamming with bot accounts or something like that. Just straight up we're winning this thing, and legitimately you could see it in the group messages or whatever, where people were like, well, this isn't our idea of what should be playing this, so it's let's uncast our votes for these bands that are clearly not going to win, and then throw them toward this one band and push them through because we like them. And and someone's like, what the fuck? And I go, yeah, you see shit like that, and sometimes you're just and this is why I don't like the scene sometimes, because it just further perpetuates shittiness and gatekeeping.
Oh yeah, man. And that's always been my problem with I love hardcore bands. I love hardcore music. Kubla Khan, Knock Loose, Terror, Trapped Under Ice. Refuse. You're wearing a Refuse. I love hardcore bands. I that's what I grew up in. But that scene has always been so weird. It's they're just not, I don't know. I appreciate how close knit hardcore scene is, in the sense that they really support their bands, but I will never understand why. I think this is metal in general, though. Why metal shits on other metal bands for no reason, other than they don't like the music, and it's just don't like it. You don't have to go on the internet and be like, this band fucking sucks. It's do we have to do that?
Well, I feel and Chris from Ghost Inside, that will have come out before this one, that's something we addressed was in our chat, the big thing was it's funny that in any other genre, collabing with an artist or a songwriter isn't looked at as a bad thing. But in our scene, it's almost this dirty word, because people assume that if you are using a songwriter to collaborate with you to write the best song you can, that person's writing the whole thing for you. And you're just oh, here's a song written for me and I play it from that point forward. And it's I don't know. It's just so weird to think about how almost any anything like using tracks, having like a show, like anything remotely like to try to be professional, to try to be the best that you can be. It's almost like, nah, dog, like you need to like just be garbage at all times for me to even want to fuck with you. And it's like, that's so weird. And it's funny because like, you mentioned Kubla Khan. Like I just saw them opening for Killswitch at 20 Monroe and it felt like a Kubla Khan show. And I'm like, and maybe people are, but it's like, I don't feel like there's any hate for them taking that tour.
No, yeah. And that's like an interesting thing too, because that band is just getting bigger and bigger, and they're definitely like a hardcore band. But it's interesting how those bands can maneuver easily and kind of transfer out of the sphere of hardcore. Like a band like Knock Loose. I mean, Knock Loose was like a hardcore band. I mean, all those guys are all in side projects that are specifically like hardcore bands, but Knock Loose has been able to transition out of the hardcore scene, but still be like a metal heavy band. But the hardcore people still love them, and which is always interesting. But like, I just don't know how they decide what they decide and how that is. It's never made sense to me. But metal in general too, like you were saying, like you were like collaborations, right? It's okay if you collaborate with another metal artist, right? Like that's super acceptable. If you have Frankie from Amir on your song, if you have, I don't know, Adam D, like whatever, right? But the moment you step out of bounds and maybe you do something that's different and you're not like Deftones, people are just like lose their shit. It's like Papa Roach just did like a duet with Carrie Underwood live, like they did, and it's like people are just shitting on it so hard, like on the internet, and it's kind of like, dude, why? Like, do you understand how many dudes in metal bands play in country bands? Like, they love metal, they're just in country because they can't make money playing the music that they actually love, so they play music that they know they can play to make the money, and then that's how they meet like other musicians and maybe start other bands. And it's like, but you should like Carrie Underwood is a huge country music artist. Like her playing with Papa Roach may be the difference between some kid who only listened to country music, Morgan Wallen and whatever the hell else exists out there, discovers Papa Roach and is like, hey, this is pretty cool. And then he discovers Korn, and then he discovers stuff. And it just kind of like goes through that, right? Like, why would we want to mitigate that? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. It never has. Like Demi Lovato came out and was like, I love metal. Like, and she like made a record that's, pretty alternative for all intents and purposes, considering what the kind of music that she makes. And again, people shitting on it. Halsey comes out and admits that she was booking bands like August Burns Red and like shit like that. And people were just shitting on her. And like, I'm just glad that like the zines that report on it didn't shit on her. They were like, this is actually really cool. And it's cool to see those people kind of starting to switch the culture. But Jesus Christ, man, metalheads are just fucking, no pun intended, but brutal.
Well, like what gets interesting about that, and I was kind of thinking about this through sort of the prism of knowing I was going to be talking to you. Like, it's funny that we're back, Bridge and I talk all the time about how funny it is that it's like when we were in high school, like it was like 70s stuff was kind of cool. And like the fashions was like that. And your parents are probably like, what the fuck? This was like cool when I was a kid. And then now we're like kind of in the 90s, early 2000s in how kids are dressing. But then even like music, like, Deftones are probably arguably bigger now than they've ever been.
Whoa, dude. I'm so glad you said that, because we literally just had band practice and we were talking about this. And did you go to the Deftones show or no? Were you there or no?
I went to Killswitch. It was the same night here.
Okay, that's right. So I went to the Deftones show. I ended up getting some free tickets for that. And I went, and so it was wild. Chino was like, whose first time is us? Like, who's the first time seeing us? And dude, like half of the arena like went nuts. And he's like, how many people have seen us before? And it was considerably lower. So many new fans for Deftones. Dude, like, you're right. Like, arguably the Deftones are bigger now than they have ever been. I remember watching the Deftones consistently at like 1,000 cap rooms, 2,000 cap rooms, whatever. And then obviously they would do the Orbit Room, right? When the Orbit Room was around, they played the Orbit Room, like those, like they were capping out at like 2,000 or 3,000 cap rooms. Now it's like they literally need an arena, and that is mind blowing to me. In their 50s, like they are in their 50s, and they're finally selling out arenas, or they're getting damn close to selling out arenas. You know what I'm saying? And that shit was wild to me, because you're right. And like me being in college as a 40-year-old, seeing all these kids, you have no idea how right you are, wearing all the 90s clothes. And I'm calling my sister and be like, are we old? She said, what do you mean? I'm like, dude, there's a 20-year-old kid wearing the pants that we wore in high school and when you were in college. She's like, you serious? I'm like, yes, right now. I'm like, fuck.
Well, I think what gets interesting about that, though, like, because it's so weird, like, especially doing the podcast and like sort of the different iterations, like a lot of people in the last like probably 5 or 6 months have really been going back through like the Deftones discography breakdown I did with Fallon from Kitty. And I don't know if it's because like Kitty's kind of having a resurgence. I don't know if it's because Deftones are having a resurgence, all of the above. But it's funny that like people are going through and they're like, oh, I don't know why you guys didn't really like Gore, or like why you guys don't really fuck with this song, or, you know, things like that. And it's like the thing I have to kind of remind people is it's like, if you're newer to the band, you're taking it all in all at once. And so like the changes, no pun intended, the band was going through sonically and some of the like the different things that they were doing isn't as much of a shock versus like you and I, where it had been like, man, from White Pony to Self-Titled was 4-5 years between, you know, so like Saturday Night Wrist to Diamond Eyes was a huge departure. It took a long time to then like same, like it kind of became like a longer touring cycle between albums. So it's like when you have that much anticipation of like, okay, we're coming off Diamond Eyes, what are you putting out now? Koi no Yokan. I remember kind of fucking with it, but I was like, ooh, it's just not as strong. Sat with it for a little while longer. It was like, heard some of the songs live. I was like, okay, like now I get it a little more. I like this record. Koi no Yokan to Gore. It's like, man, that was kind of a pretty big letdown to me, because like it just felt disjointed. It didn't fit. And you know, to a lot of people that was, you know, the Self-Titled and Saturday Night Wrist, like, but I like those records. But it's funny, just it's kind of where your point of entry is, but also, you know, I had that same experience, as I've said on discography discussion, where I'm not listening to a band that I've ever heard. So I'm listening to 25 years worth of music in a week. And what some people might be like, oh, this record was the big shift for that band. I don't care, because it's like, well, I listened to this record. This record came out 2 years later, or whenever it came next and was in the next in chronological order. It doesn't sound that drastic to me, but I don't have the actual time of waiting for these things. So having had that experience, it is really interesting to kind of see this newer generation kind of finding, and we'll just stay on Deftones, but like finding Deftones, and like apparently like a big record for them now is Saturday Night Wrist, which, and you know, was arguably a flop to a lot of people. And I always thought it was a great record. I thought it had great songs, and I would kill to hear like half of the stuff off of that now, which apparently they're playing on this tour.
Yeah, dude, they played a lot of Saturday Night Wrist stuff. They played Hole in the Earth. They played
probably Cherry Waves.
Cherry Waves. Yeah, dude, like that record rocks. But yeah, it's really crazy to see so many people discovering Deftones for the first time, like you're saying, because we've been rocking with it for since we were kids, you know. So it's really wild. But it's also interesting to see what people consider new metal now. Like I don't like
that's where I was gonna go with this too.
Dude, it's really weird what people see as new metal. Like you and me see new metal probably as Korn, Deftones, Limp Bizkit.
I see it as almost a lack of a sound or a genre, because like those bands you all just mentioned, they don't sound similar. Just like Seven Dust doesn't sound like any of them. Just like Orgy doesn't sound like them. Slipknot gets thrown in there, and I would argue Slipknot is the furthest away from new metal. Like any band that you think of in new metal, it's almost like it's an absence of a genre, of a specific genre. It just was kind of a limitless, like, what does it have? I guess groove and bounce sort of would be like the one through line for everybody, but no one band sounded similar at all. So to me, when everyone's like, we're this, and like, you know, on my end, I get all the emails with all these adjectives to describe a band, and it's like, you know, new core, and you're just like, and it's fun. It's funny to me because like you know, going back to like when you guys were deciding to not be No Life anymore because new metal's dead and the KNOWLYFE that's stupid and like all these things, and then you change to Heartsick, and then it's like, well, shit, if we just would have stayed with our old band name and our quote unquote old sound, I guess we would have been ready for the resurgence 10, 12 years later. But it's like now I feel like if you were to be like, oh, I was doing this, people are like, oh, whatever, you're just trying to hop on the train now. You're trying to trend hop again. And you're like, this is what we were doing that everyone said that we should stop doing because it wasn't cool.
Exactly. Yeah. And the irony of that, like that we changed our name and now like those things are coming back. I'm like, God damn it. Like this is so dumb. But it's like, it's very interesting to see what people consider new metal. Like, you know, I hear like now, like, the new metal tour, and it's like Alpha Wolf and like what's
Probably Tala.
Plotting You, and I'm like, bro, these bands are not new metal. What I mean, they have like tinges of like, you know, what, like, I guess what, like you said, because new metal to me was disjointed. It wasn't like, I don't know why everybody hated it so much. That was like a true metalhead, because I think it was like the cool part about all that was like there were so many bands that were coming out that did not sound like each other. They were all different and it was all cool. The thing that they had in common was heavy guitars and it was bouncy, pretty much. Other than that, I mean, like, you cannot tell me that System of a Down sounded like Korn, sounded like Deftones, sounded like Cold Chamber, sounded like, you know, Chevelle. I mean, none of those bands sound anywhere near each other, you know, Stained or whatever, but they were just part of this like thing that were coming out, right? And now what's considered new metal, I'm like, that's not new metal. I mean, it has like tinges. It's still metalcore to me, like it just with like new metal grooves now, I guess.
Well, what gets interesting though, even going back further, but again, I think this is kind of it's interesting just to kind of go back and figure out like what things were, where things were, where they were going, what would happen. Because I mean, it's like, even if you go back to like the early 90s of like hardcore, like Biohazard, most people are like, that's a hardcore band. You're like, it's kind of proto like new metal to a degree, like bouncy riffs, but like had more of that East Coast hardcore sound. You look at a band like, you know, I just had Dwid on a while ago, but like from Integrity. Integrity was a hardcore band, but to me felt more in line with like a thrash metal band that had breakdowns.
Yeah. Like, and that's the thing. It's like, it's weird. Like you said, it's just weird how those things are taken. Like, God forbid, and Killswitch Engage are not hardcore bands, but they were like all over the hardcore scene. Remember? It was like,
well, that's because of I can't speak for anyone in God forbid, because I don't think they were in another band before that, but at least like some of the dudes between Jesse or not Jesse, but Joel and Adam being in Aftershock, and then more to the point with Mike being in Overcast, like those are kind of proto metalcore bands.
Yeah. And then you had Unearth. I mean, they weren't a hardcore band, but they were just super. I mean, like, I don't know, like it's weird. Lamb of God, same thing. It was like, it's just interesting and somewhat ironic on what this scene chooses to elevate and chooses to like shit on, when it's like the reality is like, I think now more than ever, I think the coolest part now more than ever is me personally is seeing Black culture embrace heavy metal. I've never seen so many Black kids into heavy metal as I'm seeing now. And I think that's really fucking cool because, you know, when you and me, we were kind of growing up, I mean, the one Black lead singer in a metal band was LeJean Witherspoon from Seven Dust and Jared from Head PE. I mean, you had like a Living Color and stuff, but like those were like, you know, like those were really it. You really weren't seeing a lot. And now it's like, dude, like there is, I mean, the Browning has Hakeem or whatever, that guy's on guitar or whatever that dude's name is. You've got, I mean, Oceano was about to go away, but still you've got Oceano. And I mean, I'm not talking about like kind of like heavy bands. I'm talking about like these bands are like brutal, like Filth, their lead singer, that dude, you know, is brutal. So it's really interesting. It's really cool to see that happening right now. And I think we need those artists.
Well, I was gonna say, even like, we took Ed from City Built. He hasn't been to like an actual like metal show, so we took him to Kill Switch. Yeah. And by the time we got in, he was seeing Kubla Khan, and we're like, yeah, we had to kind of like, make you feel seen, with a. And he goes, oh, with a brown singer, and I was like, yeah, you see it, and someone at one point was like, oh, it's funny because like, I don't remember any of this, but I guess there was a moment where they were trying to cancel the dude from the singer of Kubla Khan for being tied to like white nationalist stuff or something like that. I was like, isn't he like not white? Well, not saying that like you like, it's not saying that you have to be white to be into that shit, but I was just like, it doesn't seem like they would like, it just didn't seem like that would be a thing.
Well, I think I kind of like, we were on tour and I kind of caught wind of what was happening. So they released that song, Khan is King or whatever like that. Mm-hmm. And in that video, I guess there's like a lot of imagery that kind of can coincide with maybe like some of that stuff, but not really. So then that turned into people going back and checking Matt Honeycutt's like shit, right? He's never hid that he's a pretty staunch Republican, from my understanding. He's a very staunch Republican. He was adopted. He lives in Texas. His adopted father, who just passed away, was white, like a white dude. He was adopted by a white family and was whatever. And I guess where the whole sort of thing came from was one of his friends that he's very close to or associates himself with apparently has ties to white nationalism or whatever. So they started shitting on that. And then that turned into looking into his like political posts. And then it was like a big fucking deal in that scene. But it's kind of like, I don't know. I was trying to follow it. I was looking at it. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you're trying to make a little bit too much out of nothing. Like, yeah, whatever, all speculation type shit. I don't know. But that was that whole thing.
Well, like, I know previously, like with the Furnace Fest thing, we kind of touched on this, but I guess coming at it from a slightly differing perspective, when you see someone like a Lejean or like even like a Chino or someone basically, I'll just say like a non-white that breaks through into more of the mainstream in metal or rock or whatever, is that something that you... I don't want to say pay more attention to, but like, I don't really know how I want to ask this, but I guess is like, do you feel like a sense of pride when you see that? Like it can be done. You can break through in a scene in a culture that's predominantly where you don't see yourself. Like, cause I think that's a huge thing. And I know it's kind of hard to talk about at times, like, race shit. Like, and I think like a really great example to kind of put it on myself. So when I took over the lid store that I was running for a while, one of the first things when I came into that store, I was like, oh shit, this isn't going to work. Like, no wonder the sales are awful. It's fucking 4 white dudes who don't know how to dress, like have no fucking sense of style, no nothing. And the whole point is like, you want to appeal to your major demographic of whatever is your predominant shopping people. You want people to see themselves in your band, in your entertainment, and whatever. Like people want to see themselves. And so I remember being like, I need to flip this, and basically I need to be kind of the only one white person that works here, because that's how our mall is as well. Like it's not a predominantly white mall. And so once I turned that around, our sales were pretty fucking good. And like I had to overcome people thinking like, okay, like you can kind of put colors together. Maybe you can help me match my shoes to an outfit and all that kind of stuff. And then probably assumed I didn't know shit about sports until we started talking. And then I kind of broke down a barrier there where I would have people coming to me, to my store specifically, even though like maybe they were closer to another mall or another thing or could buy online, but I offered an intangible and our store offered an intangible that you couldn't get anywhere. And so I think as much as people don't like hearing that, it is the reality of the world we live in, that people use their fucking eyes to judge shit. And so to me, like, I wonder, like, when you see someone like that, or even like, you did a tour earlier this year, or I guess maybe it was in the end of last year with Nonpoint, but it's like in Alliance.
Beginning of this year, yeah.
So I mean, it's one of those things. Like to me, like I feel like maybe you and Elias like are able to bond over talking about maybe like how to overcome some of these things, like these stereotypes or these adversities that you and someone like him have to overcome more than just someone like me fronting a band or being in a band. Is that a thing that you have had conversations with some of these people, or even think about at all at this point, this far into your career?
I absolutely do. To answer your question, I get so excited when I see, African American Black kids like really getting into heavy metal. I get really excited when I see really decked out Black kids at like metal shows, especially our shows. Like at Deftones, I saw so many like beautiful Black women with like like the piercings and it was so cool, like with the goth look. And I love that because for so long, as somebody that grew up in the inner city and somebody who grew up in a predominantly Hispanic and Black neighborhood, that stuff wasn't acceptable in the like the Black and Hispanic culture either, right? It's very like, no, like, and there's this sort of perception and this sort of like stereotype of Black hip hop, white rock, Hispanic Latin music. And that's not true at all. We all know that that's not true, but for whatever reason, that's the perception, right? And especially within the cultures of those things, it is the same thing. It's like, oh my God, you're Black and you like heavy metal, you like that double shit. And it's like, bro, like Black people can like whatever, white people can like whatever, like it doesn't matter. Hispanic people, same thing. Rock is a really big deal in Puerto Rico. Like heavy metal and rock is huge in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and everything else. It's not as known. So I get really excited when I see that because it is important. Representation, no matter where we stand in this weird political climate, no matter what people say, it is important to take note of what somebody's heritage and cultural background is because it matters. It's how you get inspired in certain aspects, right? Like there's a reason why it's so important to have an artist like Buddy Guy, a reason to have a guy like BB King, a reason to have Aretha Franklin, Tupac, Biggie, like all of those people in different music genres open the door for these communities and these people in this culture to be like, wait, that's actually okay. Like I can step out of my own cultural norm and go do this thing. LaJohn, Elias, like those things are important. And to me, it really matters because it's a way that you can inspire some kid who's maybe living in the inner city and all of his friends are into like super hardcore rap, but he like is really feeling Blink-182 besides Lil Wayne and Drake and Kendrick, right? Or whatever it is, right? Like that's really important. It always stands out to me, always cool when I see big hip hop artists really shout out the love for metal. It was so cool to see Kevin Gates having an interview talking about Green Day, Blink-182. It was awesome seeing Seal talk about his love for Soundgarden. That blew my fucking mind. I would have never thought that Seal wanted to be in an alternative rock band in my life. And the dude's like a lifelong hardcore, like Soundgarden fan, Demi Lovato, like all this. It's so important. And that representation matters, especially for me, like culturally, it really does. I have had these conversations, but not with people that are like on the higher tiers. Like me, Elias on our tour with Nonpoint, he was very sick, like half the tour. He got super sick. So he really like was on stage and got back on the bus and he pretty much got everybody on the tour sick minus me and like two people. So everybody caught what Elias had, right? But me and Damon from Of Virtue, we talk about this a lot because it does matter to us. It is important to us because we understand that there's not enough representation in that. And I think that there needs to be representation, just like there needs to be representation of females in rock. I think it's great that we have a band like Spirit Box who can really stand on the heels of actual talent and making great songs and not just trying to sell some sexy, pretty chick that's fronting a band. It's so important to have baby metal, right? I think baby metal is great. Like I love baby metal. And I think it's awesome to see a bunch of Japanese women who like don't have to dress provocative or anything and dress up on these crazy costumes and do all this crazy stuff. And it's rad. Like we need that representation to continue to inspire cooler shit. If it wasn't for In Living Color, we probably wouldn't have as cool Seven Dust, right? We wouldn't have Seven Dust, maybe. I don't know. Because every culture takes what they see and what they love, and they kind of switch it up just a little bit. And I have like a great example of this in like real time. That happened just yesterday. As you know, I'm in school. I'm going to MSU. And we had like a project that we had to do with a 4-person group. And each of us had to do a live multicam production of a band that was one of our buddies' friends playing a song. So each one of us had to direct a song that they were playing live on a multicam aspect. So there's 4 cameras. We have to do like take 1, take 2, take 3, whatever, right? And we designed the set differently. Everybody's set was different, but the one kid, that the other black kid in our group, Amari, who's really not into rock at all, his set design was wild. It was the coolest one out of all of us. And I was like, damn, bro, like that's why we need this cultural stuff in here too, because, you know, no offense, but the 2 white dudes in our group were pretty vanilla. It was like, let's put red lights. Cool. And let's get the band. Amari was like, yo, I want this purple, like this green, like this red, like this yellow light. And it was like, it was crazy. It was complete. His vision of what a rock band was in a live setting was so different from all of us. Even from me. I was like, damn, my shit was vanilla as shit compared to him. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like, so it's so important to have that. And I get really excited because I know that it's going to be cool and it's going to be awesome and it's not going to be the same. And I love that. And I really, really do. You know, I think it really does matter, especially now more than ever. I think we need to talk about diversity. We need to talk about being inclusive in these scenes. We need to talk about how this all correlates to the human experience. It really does. We cannot talk about humanity without talking about the cultural shifts in humanity and how humanity has come to be because of influences from other cultures and other musical backgrounds and everything else, right? So for me, it's very important. I love that stuff.
Well, I think it just gets kind of interesting thinking about it, but I it's so weird because like something like that has been kind of omnipresent on this show, especially recently, has just kind of been like talking about how music has always kind of been segregated geographically. So I mean, like you could even go, you can do it between like the different genres. Like it's like, okay, hip hop. Back when hip hop started, East Coast, like New York style shit didn't sound like stuff from, you know, the South, didn't sound like shit from the West Coast, didn't sound like something from whatever. Same with hardcore. Like what was happening out on like the West Coast in Orange County and stuff like that didn't sound like what was happening in, you know, New York, didn't sound like what was happening in Massachusetts, didn't sound like what was happening in New Jersey. Like everyone kind of regionally put their stamp on what they were doing. And I feel like there used to kind of be, I don't necessarily want to say bias, but it's like, you know, you kind of fucked with your stuff. And it was almost like a point of pride where you're like, this came from us. This is me. This is like us. This is like who we are represented in a musical format. And I feel like even if you kind of go back and start mixing the genres, like doing something like a Judgment Night soundtrack where it's like you got someone like Onyx working with, I think it was Biohazard, but then it's like you have all these different types of bands and they're like, oh, you're from New York? Oh, you grew up here too? Oh, we fuck with you just automatically. Like there's a sense of pride and loyalty, even beyond skin color or anything like that. Just we're New Yorkers. New Yorkers stick together. Oh, we're you know, from Orange County. We're from this area. We're like, there was kind of more of a regional thing where you just kind of like had your people. And I don't even know if that exists anymore. And I feel like that's kind of sad, potentially, like that your own community beyond a music or an entertainment or anything, but like your community doesn't exist anymore. I'm reminded of something Vincent from the Acacia Strain said on Twitter like forever ago. And then I feel so stupid because I just didn't get it at the time. But like, I remember he was like, oh, was hanging out with my neighbor. Get to know your neighbors. And then I was like, at the time, like most of my neighbors sucked. And then through getting my dog and walking my dog around like the whole area, especially during like COVID times and stuff, like I know so many of my neighbors now. And it's kind of crazy to be like, oh, that's so and so, and like you might stop and talk to them for a couple minutes and hang out. Like there's a couple of guys down at the we got like a gay couple that moved in like probably 3 or 4 years ago, a couple houses down, and like Bridget and I were like, we should get to know them and like have them over for like bonfires or something, or a grilling out, or like some of our other people, and maybe do like a block party or something. And it's like, when I read Vincent's thing, I was like, this is stupid. Who would do this? Like, who wants to hang out with the old people in your like neighborhood, or like who wants to get to know them? Because usually I looked at it as kind of like an us versus them kind of thing, where I'm like, they're older, they've been here, I'm younger, who cares? Like, whatever. Like, there's nothing we could have in common. But when you live somewhere long enough, and maybe that was the thing, is I just never had any roots settled anywhere. I always kind of stayed somewhere for a hot minute and then just left. So it's like Lansing, I don't look too great on Lansing because like my time there was very short and it was whatever. And then like all my friends kind of hated each other and I left. So it's like, that is Lansing to me, is like people that like, there's no community there to me, but it's because I didn't stick around. I didn't help build a community. And I think like that's, as I get older, that's something I've realized now, is like, it takes you to kind of want to be a part of something as well.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That it really is that, I think music genres, specifically in the rock and the metal and the hardcore, are really cultural things, or like part of a cultural group or society. It's not the same as like pop music. It's not like there's the culture around metal and hardcore and stuff like that is so different from all the other types of like cultural that may be around other music scenes. This is really much like an us, like come in, and we talk about that all the time in the metal, like, oh, we're so accepting, come, this is where, that's kind of what it started out as, like that was supposed to be what it was, right? And now it's kind of coming from soccer. Now it's like kind of like there's like, no, you got to gatekeep, like keep these fucking weirdos out of here. It's like, what are you talking about? Like that's the reason why this became a thing, because it was like, oh, you feel like an outcast, come to us. And that's why, again, I really think the whole culture thing and the whole sort of like bringing more people in is really important too, because I even look at it in a way of like, it's hard to be a Black kid or an Asian kid or a Hispanic kid and relate to someone who may not look like you, but is speaking lyrics that kind of talk to you. Let's take depression, right? Everybody talks about depression, or, we all deal with that stuff. We all have to deal with it, and we all deal with it in our ways. And musicians write about it a lot, right? But when you have a artist, maybe like let's take, I don't know, let's take LeJohn, right? And talk and say, and he's writing a song and he's talking about how he's feeling about, this particular thing that maybe is about him being depressed or whatever it is. That resonates a little bit more with the Black kids and stuff, because they're like, oh wait, like he understands my culture as well, and he feels like this, and these lyrics are impactful. Same thing with like, you look at a band like, have you ever seen or heard of Hormone the Mighty or something? I forget what the name of that band is. They're in its. They're,
yes, I have. Jason still lives out there, is into them.
That band is insane. That band is like a Japanese band, right? So you see this stuff, and it's just very cool to see. And you're right, and it is a sort of cultural way to come into something as well. And it's weird that we let it kind of like become this gatekeeping thing. It's just odd to me.
Sorry, you reminded me. Oh yeah. So it's funny you kind of said that, because I still go back through To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar.
Dude, great.
And I still find stuff that I'm just like, oh, I didn't catch. I don't know. It's I'm still essentially 3 records behind at this point, because like I'm still finding shit in that record.
I think I lost you, buddy.
Nope, you're good. But I was going to say, like, it's like a almost video game mentality. It's like, until I 100% this, I can't move on to the next thing. And so, like, I was listening to the song Mama off of To Pimp a Butterfly, and there was a line where and I still am not entirely sure if he's essentially talking to himself as a kid, because a lot of the record is sort of him in different, like K Dot and then Kendrick, and then like there's different iterations of who he is, and he's kind of playing these different characters of himself, which you could say potentially is bipolar disorder, multiple personalities, like could be a lot of different ways to unpack it. But in it, like he's talking about how when he went back to Compton, he saw this like kid, and he goes, "You do know my features. I'm a product of the struggle." And he's kind of talking in that song sort of though about like how everyone's kind of like, you left us here. You weren't here when these things happened, when your friends died, like, all these kind of things. And then he's kind of talking to this little kid, like, you do recognize me. You do know my features. You do know the struggle of all this stuff. Like, I see myself in you. And like, it's sort of like an inspiration and all that kind of stuff. But it just kind of hit me a little bit differently this time. Cause it's like, I was joking with someone recently where I was like, why is it that we are able to identify the things we don't like in ourselves and others, and we're able to offer those people advice that we can't give ourselves?
Dude, that's such a poignant point. That is some poetic shit right there. That is so true. I mean, that is probably one of the most poetic things you've ever said, brother. Like, it is. It's true. It's true. Why can we? I don't know. And why can't we? I don't know. Like it. And that's such a poignant thing to say, because it stands so true. And I think that's art in general, right? I think that's what separates people who want to do art and be musicians or paint or whatever it is to people who don't want to do that stuff. It's the ability to tap into that but still not understand it, right? It's crazy to have somebody like, rest in peace, Chester Bennington, right? Who could write all these beautiful and crazy lyrics that were really poignant and straightforward, and people would read them, right? And then what happens, and they go, oh my God, like, how could? And it's like, yo, he was telling you in his songs, and you were like connecting with it. And you're like, this surprises you? Like, this is a surprise. I'm like, read that guy's words. Like, that dude was hurt. You know what I'm saying? There's so many other things, and you're right. It's like, why can we but can't at the same time?
Yeah, I think a big thing recently for me has been a lot more of accountability for myself, holding others to a certain standard too. That like where it's like, no, I'm going to hold you accountable for what you say and do. And I don't know. It always inevitably comes back to this on this show, but it's like, therapy's a hell of a thing, man. I think especially as I get older and there's things you realize that are like, it's so funny. I always thought this was a really interesting way to look at it after seeing Inside Out with like the core memories and the way that like the brain, stores memories and gets rid of other shit and all that. But it's funny because like in recent, like in the last like year or two, or I should say a little bit more than that, but there's been so many things that like I've kind of unlocked that I had forgotten, or I guess maybe trauma and like tucked it away or something, that's kind of come to the surface now where you're just like, oh, fuck. Okay. Like that explains why I do this thing, or why I am this way, or why I react to certain things this way, these triggers and so forth. But at another point, instead of just using that as a crutch to be like, well, I was shitty to you because, well, this thing happened to me. And it's like, that sucks for you, but it doesn't mean you get to just lash out at people and be a shitty person. Like figure out how to deal with your own shit and kind of work through it. Hold yourself accountable to maybe a higher standard of how to be, versus just kind of being like, well, something bad happened to me, so now I'm just going to take it out on everybody else because it's not my fault either. And I guess that's where like the permission to give yourself the permission to feel the things, to kind of go through it and come out the other side and just try to be better. I know I struggle with it. I try to work on it quite a bit. And that's why I think the idea of accountability is like so huge to me now. Cause it's like, as I get older, man, like I don't want to let people down. I don't want to be a burden to anyone. And I don't want to be I don't want to be a shitty person. there's too much of that already in the world. So it's like, at least if I can figure out my own shit and then not be that way to everyone else, like at least I can sort of stop perpetuating the cycle of it. But I just feel like too many people don't want to look inward, don't want to work on themselves. And it just becomes this thing where it's like, how like, a kind of a through line. And I'm going to ask you this, because like since last time we talked, you now have a kid, and the episode with Ken's going to come out as of when we're talking, and he's about to have his kid here pretty soon. And Andrew from DGG just had his kid. Today's Monday, so on Saturday, as of when we're recording, he just had his first kid, his daughter. So I mean, it's kind of been an omnipresent thing of just like, what do kids teach you? Like, Andrew kind of wrote some really profound shit, and I'm using my phone to do this. I can't pull up the text, but I know I asked Ken, like, what are you feeling now? And something that he kind of was talking about was, I've given 25 years of my career and just had this like horrible implosion of the Esley dying thing, and all this kind of stuff. Maybe now, like, it's just a sign that this is time to focus on being a family and kind of seeing what that's going to be like and figuring things out from there. Adversely, like, how has being a dad changed you? How has it changed you as a creative, as an artist, and all those kind of things? Like, what has it done to you?
It's funny that you use the word accountability. Accountability is something that I talk about and think about all of the time, because much like you going to therapy, you're right. Therapy is a hell of a thing. It really is, especially when you open yourself up to it and you really tell yourself that this is something you're going to commit to, and really be really honest with yourself, because that's what accountability really is. It's being honest with yourself to a point where you have to admit some really tough things about yourself to yourself, and then obviously decide whether you want to change them or not, right? Or whether you want to accept them or not. And I love that you use that, because it's such an important thing in life that I feel we're starting to lack a lot of in today. And I love that you asked about being a dad, and you included the word accountability in this conversation, because what being a father teaches you the most, in my opinion, is accountability. It teaches you all the things that you didn't realize were messed up by, and now you're literally imprinting it onto another human being. And you have to take a step back and go, what am I mad about? So, for example, I had to go to therapy for this, dude. I've been in and out of therapy, and I started going to anger management therapy because I as you know, I do like a million things, and I was really stressed out, and just, it was, my relationship with my wife and my kid was suffering, in the sense of like, I was very hyper agitated all the time because I was so busy, and I was trying to juggle all these things and not right. And I would find myself being very mad. My son's 3 now, so he doesn't cry as much, but I realized real quick, and when becoming a father, I fucking hated crying. And I mean, when my kid cried, I'm saying this, no filter, it really made me want to do something violent. That's how badly I hated crying. And I started thinking to myself, every time he cried, I found myself just getting even more mad. Like, if I was mad at him for doing something, whatever he did, then I got even more mad because he was crying. And it got to a point where I had to be accountable, right? And say, what the fuck is my problem at wanting to like freak out on a 2-year-old about crying? That's what the fuck they do. They cry. What is wrong with me? Not what's wrong with him. What is wrong with me? I am the adult. I am the 42-year-old adult, and I am mad at a 2-year-old for crying. And not just mad like, oh, I hate you. I'm like, I want to punch a wall mad type shit. So I put myself into therapy. And you want to know what I had to do with accountability? I had to figure out what I was really mad about. And I wasn't mad about my kid crying. I was mad about the fact that my father didn't allow me to cry. And because he didn't allow me to cry, I now try and print that on my son, because and you said it best, I didn't get to do it, you shouldn't get to do it either now. And that's not right. And that's the accountability. What I've learned about being a father is accountability. I need to realize all of the flaws that I have and why am I mad at him for doing something? I'm not really mad at him for doing something. I'm mad at him. I'm mad at myself for doing the same thing or not being allowed to do the same thing. And it's changed me profoundly in that way. It teaches you, if you decide to be accountable and decide to go get help and be aware of your own biases and your own anger and stuff, it teaches you so much about everything. My creativity is even bigger now because I see him. He wants to be in the studio, in the garage all the time with us where we practice. I just posted a video today of him just picking up the microphone and yelling into the mic, and he wants to be like that. Dude, that is an emotion that I cannot explain or describe to anybody unless they are a father and they have experienced. There is nothing in this world that will change you as profoundly as having a child, because you'll either have to learn how to be who you are and accountable for the person that you are and used to be and are still being, or you'll just completely negate that and just suck at it. So for me, being a father has changed me in every aspect. Creatively, I'm more creative now because I see him having an imagination. And as an adult, you're like that, you're like, I can't act like a child anymore. I'm an adult. But then you hang out with this little 2-3-year-old and he's got all this crazy, wild imagination. And it's like, there's no rules. There's no rules. And you start looking at that going, I don't want any rules. I want to try that. And it changes your creativity because it's not really about like writing a song or something. It's about the idea of like, he has no boundaries. He doesn't understand fear. He doesn't understand like a boundary in certain aspects. And I think as we grow up as adults, as we grow up as musicians and stuff, we start understanding like it makes you bitter, bro. It does, like we have conversations about how shitty the industry can be and all this other stuff. It makes you a bitter human being. But you look at that and you're like, he's not bitter yet. I need to go back to that. And that inspires you a lot too, right? But the same thing with how you like respond to what they do. You're not responding to what they're doing. You're responding to what internally you weren't allowed to respond to or grew up realizing that was the way that the world was. And you weren't like, you didn't have a choice, right? So to me, that's what being a parent does.
Well, it's kind of funny you bring up the imagination thing, because like in my chat with Dwid from Integrity, that was something he kind of brought up when I was like, you lived in the Midwest, like grew up in the Midwest, like I didn't. I moved from the East Coast to Midwest, but in a time where the internet wasn't really a thing, like so that was a big culture shock, was kind of like the lack of culture, because it would take so long for something to get here in the middle of the country. And so I was kind of like, is that sort of like a lack of parameters or a lack of people around you kind of being like, oh, well, this isn't really what we're doing, so don't do that. And he was like, no, it's just, I never really lost my sense of imagination and wonder. Like, I think that's the thing, is like a lot of us lose that. Yeah, and those that haven't are kind of the people that just kind of do shit. And, I'm kind of paraphrasing, and he didn't say like, we created a genre because, we have more imagination than anyone else. It was almost like we didn't have people telling us not to do these things. So we're like, well, I like this and I like this and I like this, so why can't I put them together? Like, it was the imagination of being like, oh, I wonder what that sounds like. I want to hear it. So here it is. And I did it. So I think about that all the time. And I think that is one of the things, as something like myself that doesn't want a kid, but I find interesting about kids, is like watching them go from these essentially like blobs kind of that just are there and they cry and make noise, to then they start kind of like how they learn, what they learn, how they start kind of becoming their own people. And to me, it's always like the few friends of mine that I was around with when they had kids at varying ages, it was just like, oh man, you're becoming like your own person. This is weird. Yeah. To me, like not weird, like in a bad way, just like, oh, this is weird. Like, no, it is 5, but like you have your own personality now. And like, you're starting to think for yourself, and like you're aware of like people and you pick up on things, and thinking about like how I was that way. And like that was something that Chris from Ghost Inside and I were talking about, was like, for the longest time, I always kind of looked at like my parents treating me not like a kid as a good thing, because I was like, I felt more prepared for a lot of things because I wasn't treated as a kid. Now, as I'm my age now, I kind of look at it as a hindrance because I don't really identify with people my own age. I like people older than me typically, or like it kind of feels like it's stunted part of my growth as a kid, like growing up, where I'm like, you know, going to school and being like, you guys don't fuck with Rod Stewart. And they're like, what? Like, it's New Kids on the Block. And you're like, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it just was,
yeah.
it's weird to kind of like look at it now being 40 and thinking about like how I really never identify with people my own age. And like, is that a hindrance?
No, man, no. And
or not feeling like I could be a kid. Maybe that's more of where I'm coming at with it, is like, I never feel like I really got to be a kid as a byproduct.
And that's the thing, man. That's what kids teach you, right? It's like, if you had a kid, or if you wanted a kid or something, your kid would generally, it's crazy what kids teach you based on your literal life experience, because you would be like, the first thing you'd go to is like what you just said. You'd be like, and it would teach you how to be that now. And it's the same thing with me, man. Like, you know, it just teaches you what your biggest faults are. It really does. Like, once you have a kid, all the shitty things about yourself, oh yeah, they start coming out real quick. And you're like, you can either ignore them, or you can be like, wow, I didn't realize I had all these shitty habits and had these shitty tendencies. Damn, maybe I should go to therapy. And that is literally what it did to me. I know, and mind you, I had already been in therapy 5 years prior to that too, like for like 5 years doing therapy. And I was like, how the fuck do I have a kid knowing that I'm kind of messed up, go to therapy, feel like I got better, and then go like, no, wait, I'm actually really messed up. I need to go see a therapist again. You know, like it's wild, man. It really is. And you're absolutely right. Seeing kids grow up, as a parent, as someone on the outside, I'm telling you right now, nothing prepares you for it. And it is still weird. As a parent, he does things every day, my son, and I'm like, where the fuck did you learn that? I don't know how my son is who he is. He just is. And it's just like trying to wrap your head around the fact that like he is now his own little person. He has his own little things that he does. He has his own little mannerisms. And you're like, what the, like, it just happens. It's wild. It's crazy.
I had kind of because like I've been dealing with what I would describe as like weird arthritis-y things for like the last week. Like both my knees are like just super sore and shot out of nowhere.
Welcome to being 40, buddy.
No, but like literally, like last like Wednesday, like I woke up and I was like, man, my knees and my like left wrist are just like super sore and awful. Don't know why, don't know what happened. Didn't fall, but it feels like I did. Like it feels like an old like falling and eating shit skateboarding like 20 years ago. But like I didn't do any of that to bring on any of this. So you're like, what the fuck's going on? And it's to the point where like when I wake up in the morning, I can barely literally get up and get out of bed because like my knees are so sore. So I'm like, and like I have to take an Advil or Tylenol or something, and I'm like, all right, like, and then even today, like that took a while to like set in to where I can like use my wrist a little bit and get to walking. And so I was like, I'm gonna go see a doctor. And so I went to my primary person today, and you know, it was kind of funny. We were just talking about like sort of biases of sorts, and so when I went and saw her before my foot surgery, she was like, because I wanted to get my, at the time, high blood pressure under control. And so I went to her and she was like, oh, do you like asking me a bunch of questions? Like, do you like, what's your diet? Like, do you drink? How often do you drink? And I'm like, I probably drink like once or twice a week, maybe. How many drinks do you have in that time? Could be 6-7 drinks and like 4 or 5 shots over the course of 8 or 9 hours. And she's like, oh, that's so binge drinking. And I'm like, sure, I guess. Like, doesn't seem like that, but sure. Like, by your definition, yeah, I guess that's what it is. So I haven't seen her since my surgery and got all my blood work done and stuff like that. So, like, most of it came back fine, other than the blood pressure, which I'm on a med for. So I saw her today to be like, hey, like this is going on. It's been going on for like a week. Like, I'm not sure what it is. So she hadn't seen me since the surgery. So she's going through the same questions that she had kind of asked previously. And it was this thing where she's like, oh, well, I'm wondering if it's because like, you know, you're still drinking like this or your diet's bad or whatever. And I'm like, my diet's been pretty much the same for 40 fucking years. Why would it just turn on right now? I've been drinking the way I actually cut way back on drinking in the grand scheme of things, like from when I was younger. So like if that was a thing and it was bad, you would think it would have like kind of kicked in when I was doing it like every single day, kind of a thing. And I kind of was like talking to my wife about it, and I go, and I'm not sure what ethnicity she is, so I'm just going to kind of assume based on her last name and all that. But I was like, I think she's some sort of like Indian, Pakistani, somewhere in there. And I go, yeah. I wonder if this is culture, like a cultural bias from her perspective, where it's like, well, it must be these things because they're not things that she does or partakes in. And then, you know, Bridget was talking about how she had a doctor who sort of the same thing. Like their culture was like, you don't eat red meat at all. And so like, that was her first thing, was like, you can eat red meat like once a month and that'll solve all your problems. And it was just like, and so it was like kind of a really weird epiphany today to just kind of be like, wow, it's interesting to think that even in a very regimented profession as like a doctor or medical things, or potentially even therapists and stuff like that, like how much of cultural bias still seeps in, even if you don't mean it to.
It's important, man. It really is. I mean, it really is the makeup of all human beings. We revert back to what our genes and our DNA knows, man. And what you grew up with. I mean, I don't care what anybody says, man, you could be the best doctor in the world. You can be the best doctor in the world, have read all the medical journals, you're top of your field, blah, blah, blah. And I guarantee that person has some weird bias about something in medicine. Like you said, it's funny you chose red meat because that is something that my mom lives by. Oh, well, you need to eat more protein. You need to eat, your son needs to eat more meat. And I'm like, where are you getting this from? Like what? And here's the better part. She's a doctor, but culturally that part is just lost on her. It's just ingrained into her brain. Protein, meat, you have to eat it or you cannot survive. Like it's the same thing, right? Not that I'm a vegetarian or anything, but it's adding to your point, which is a very poignant and great point because it's true. And, you know, as far as like, I laughed when you were talking about, you know, like your knees and your wrists and stuff, because I'm just going to tell you, it's just because you're getting old, bro. I'm telling you right now, I will just be standing. Standing. I'm not moving. I'm just standing in a spot. And suddenly my knee just pops and I'm like, fuck. And I don't know why. I didn't do anything the night before. I didn't do shit. I'm just standing there. And suddenly your knee goes, nah, not today. And it just, you know.
The irony as we're saying this, I just got
just getting old.
I was going to say I finally got my anti-inflammatory, anti-arthritis pills back from that I started taking after my foot surgery. Haven't had them in a couple of days, which not related to, because the lady was like, no, it wouldn't, like you not taking them after this long wouldn't just cause these to start even when you were still taking them. But the other thing I forgot about, because it's happening right now, is the onset of cramps when you take these fucking things.
Oh yeah.
So now I'm currently getting a cramp like right behind my knee. And I'm just like, I've been drinking water all day. I've been walking all day. I've been doing everything. And now as we're doing this, I have to like look real weird. Like I'm like jerking off or something. Cause like the back of my thigh is like cramping up right now.
No, yeah, man, I get it. Dude. I get it. Like, you know, getting old sucks, dude. But it's also why having a kid is awesome because it teaches you to stay young. And I think that your philosophy about like, you know, never feeling like, or, you know, like relating to people your age. I think that's normal, man. I think a lot of us go through that, but we just go through it in like different types, right? Like for me, I've never related to people my, like, I wouldn't say like my age either, but like the mentality of people my age. I still love to go have fun and love to do things, but I grew up in a household where my parents were the same way. You know, my mom, like, she's dying to go skydiving. And I'm just like, you are 60. years old. You're not going skydiving. You know, she's like, you're only 68 in your body, not your mind. Like, so, you know,
You're right. I feel at least 55 in my body sometimes.
Dude, I feel like 70, dude. Fuck. But yeah, man, I mean, all great points that you made, because it's true. But, you know, bringing it full circle, all of it, I think, in my opinion, is important because of the cultural aspects of it, you know, and the cultural things that you go through, and the culture in heavy metal too. You know, this is really a culture. You know, you go to a show and you start talking about a band and you're like, oh, I love that band. And here comes this little thing that becomes the thing. What's up, buddy? Speaking of the devil, here's my son. Daddy's doing an interview right now, bud. Do you want to say hi?
I can lift you up onto the bed.
Come and say hi real quick. Say hi to my buddy, John. Say hi, John.
Hi, John.
Hello.
He has hair. I don't. That's how
I was going to say your dad's really jealous of your hair. I know he is.
I'm very jealous of his hair. Very jealous.
That's all you did was you just created a hair farm for yourself.
Exactly. That's all I do. Oh, hey, buddy, hold on. Dad's doing this interview, man. Yeah. Say hi, John.
So, I mean, hello. I guess that seems kind of like a logical follow-up question kind of from where we're at right now, but do you
talk to me? He has an interview.
Is it kind of scary for you to have a mixed child in today's climate?
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Buddy, hey, you gotta go. I love you. Yeah, see, I'm telling you, man. Like, go see Uncle Barrick. He'll play drums for you. He's like in love with our drummer Barrick. He's like, Barrick is his favorite person in the whole world, dude. He watches videos of Barrick and is like, "Where's Uncle Barrick? I want to hang out with Barrick." But yeah, it's terrifying, man. It really is. I never felt any sort of fear walking anywhere, being anywhere, like at all. But obviously the climate that we're in and whatever makes it's very terrifying, because I've always been aware of my skin color and my heritage and my culture. I always have been. I've dealt with racism all of my life. It is nothing new. I've heard the hard R more times than I care to count. But having a kid makes it different, because I'll go to the store with my son. He's blonde. You saw him. He's white as snow, and he's got curly hair. And I fear sometimes that people won't think he's my kid, and they'll start questioning me on it, right? I fear for him because, kids. I was having a conversation with a friend, and basically what it boiled down to is my buddy is Indian. His ex-wife and his mother of his son is white, blonde, blue-eyed, like American. And his son doesn't look Indian at all. His son looks a lot like my son. And I guess his son, essentially what ended up happening was somebody at school got mad at his son and called him a bunch of derogatory terms used for Indian people. His son didn't get mad about it and didn't understand. His dad, my buddy, had to explain to him why he will never be accepted the way that he thinks he's being accepted, not because of him, but because of his father. I feel the same way. My son is going to walk around in this world not realizing that he's not as white as he thinks he is. And at some point in time, someone is going to say something to him that's derogatory, that he won't take an insult by, but what they're really trying to do is insult his being because of me. And I do fear that. I really do. I my wife's dealt with the racism. We've had people comment on her fucking Facebook, like, you know, you should marry your own race, blah, blah, blah. Like literally somebody called my wife a race traitor. Like, what the fuck is that? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I do worry about that. And I do think about that. And it can be pretty scary, man, for sure.
I mean, and maybe potentially this is who you were talking about, but I just thinking of that, I wondered if like someone like Waylon is someone that maybe you two have built a stronger bond in your friendship going through being dads and kind of being dads of mixed race, you know, families and so forth. And like maybe he now has been able to offer you advice that like on how to navigate this, how not to let these things bother you more than just the two of you have probably ever had being in a band where people, you know, might have been like, oh, I wouldn't have expected Heartsick or No Life or whatever. Like the four of you kind of look like a hodgepodge of people thrown together.
Yeah, we are.
But it's a thing where I wonder, and I've thought since you've had your kid at this point, like if that's something that maybe has more solidified your friendship and your commitment to one another as friends and bandmates, because now you kind of can connect on a deeper level maybe than any of you would have ever imagined at this point until you kind of, like you said, go through it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It definitely has strength. Our kids are 6 months apart. Our kids constantly hang out. Like they are constantly playing with each other. We take them to, so it's bonded us even more. His baby mama is my wife's best friend. Like our kids play instruments together. They have fun together. We go to functions together. It definitely is. And it's definitely something that's made it more awesome because now I really understand where he's coming from in that aspect. Before, when I didn't have a kid and he already had a kid, it was hard for me to understand certain things. And now I'm like, no, I get it. I totally get it. I 100% get it. And it's brought us closer too, for sure. And obviously, you know, him being 100% native really is cool too, because it just adds another dimension to the band. It adds another dimension to the aspect of the band and another dimension to how we approach the art of the band, because we really do instill some of the cultural aspects of who we are as people into the music, you know? So yeah, it's met us way closer.
And then you got Jared, who just wears probably as many jerseys and hats as I do.
Yeah, dude, Jared is a grown ass kid, man. He has all the jerseys, bro. He's buying jerseys every week. It's insane. You guys could have an entire conversation for like 6 hours just about sports and jerseys. He is a fucking jersey and sport fanatic.
Yeah, he's got some good stuff. Also some kind of garbagey things where I'm just like, the jersey's cool, the player not so much.
Dude, yeah. I would love to see you guys have a conversation, because I think that conversation would be fucking great.
Something that I've kind of found interesting, and I don't really know if I've really had an opportunity to talk about this at all on here, but in part of you going back to school, going back to college at Michigan State, you were taking a podcasting class, which I thought was just so fucking wild, because it's like and this kind of correlates in something I thought would be interesting to talk about, given the fact that it's like I think this will be in November, will be 9 years, and then obviously 500 episodes. But it's a thing, like when I started, I feel like I was so late to it, because I was really into listening to the different people that I was listening to back then, when they were kind of the first wave, you know, after like the Adam Carolla or even like Mark Maron to a degree and Kevin Smith were kind of the first kind of ushering in of like a lot of different types of podcast and what podcasting could be, or what is it as far as a medium, to now, like, you know, I know you and I have kind of joked where it's like there's a section in Target to be a streamer, and I think it's like called like the influencer area or whatever, and it's like the accessibility to like get things now to be able to do this is so wild to me, because when I was starting, and it's like, I guess you use this microphone, but like, how do you do anything? Where do you put your show? Like, a lot of that information wasn't really as omnipresent as it is now, where someone's like, oh, my phone goes to the YouTube app, and then I can, and like now all the apps, like the social media apps, like you can do and edit a lot of stuff in it. So it's just wild to then hearing you being like, I'm taking a podcasting class. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how is that even remotely a course? Like,
dude,
wild.
It's the podcasting class at MSU is a big fucking deal. Like, it's hard to get.
Is it really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And
Wild.
it's very, very, very popular. And
is it like like an offshoot through like a communications major or something? Like, it's the only thing I can think that it would correlate to in a real major.
Journalism.
Journalism. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Dude, podcasting. I mean, it's funny that you think that you were late to it, but you were super early to it, bro. Like, super early to it. Like, now everyone wants to have a podcast or whatever. And, you know, it's kind of like a joke, like, oh, you're a lead singer. Do you have a podcast? I'm like, fuck no, dude. I'm not gonna have my own podcast. Like, that's way too like cliche now for like a lead singer, you know? But it's a big deal, man. It's really important. And as a student at MSU in the communication arts and sciences, you know, it's a big deal in journalism. Podcasting is huge. It's such an integral part of journalism today. And it has evolved so much. And they teach a whole course on how to do literally teach you how to do a podcast. Like, it would blow your mind, because you'd be like, what the fuck, you know? But yeah, it is a 300 level credit course.
300 level.
Yes.
Wild.
You
blowing my mind right now.
You could be a college professor right now teaching podcasting. Dead serious.
I don't think so.
Oh yeah, I promise.
Wild. I just remember, like, when you were telling me that, I was like, wow, all right, weird. Like, because in my mind, it's almost like it reminds me of like, so my tattoo artist, Chris Bentley, you know, went to Kendall down here for like art, like drawing and like art. It's an art school. And I remember something that I find interesting about that is, like, you know, they would, at least in his classes, I can't speak to the whole like curriculum that they offer as a whole. But it was a thing to me, like, where it's like, it's interesting that you have an art class where it's like, okay, you're learning about, we'll say, Rembrandt, and like what made him unique, and like what he was doing at the time that wasn't what other people were doing, and how he kind of broke the rules of conventional art and all these kind of things. And then, like, you might be tasked with like, okay, make a Rembrandt style painting or a drawing or whatever. And then you would be critiqued, and it's like, well, you didn't really follow the parameters or the guidelines. And it's like, yeah, but the other side of this that I kind of did was like, I didn't do what was expected. Like, I understand that there's styles and there's things, and within those there's kind of rules. But the reason that style even became about was because it bucked all traditional like norms and rules. It's almost like what it became was an absence of all of those things. So how are you grading someone on not following a certain thing when the whole thing came about because it didn't follow any rules? And I always thought that just kind of like, it's almost a double negative, where it's like, you're trying to tell me to think outside the box and don't be so like everything has to be this. But then when I do something like that, you're like, well, you didn't do these things. And it's like, well, the message and the execution are two totally different things. So to me, like, thinking about a podcast, like, I joke with like Dan, like my old co-host, and other people, it's like the way we all go about doing the show, how like the equipment we use, how we record everything, even the platform we put it on to get it out and all that kind of stuff, even to promotion online and so forth, or lack thereof in my case. But it's a thing where it's like, there's no one way to do it. So the idea that there's a class where someone's going to tell you what to do, and it's almost like this is the definitive way to do it, it's like, man, I don't think so. Like, that would be a trip to me.
It's wild. But it's really not about this the definitive way to do so. It's more of like how to structure it, right? It's important to have structure in a podcast. It really is. Sure. Like, you have made your podcast what it is because you had a structure. Now you know that structure, and now you just kind of do whatever you want within that structure of your podcast. It's kind of the same thing that they teach, right? You know, but I mean, dude, you'd be surprised how much has changed. Like right now, like I'm taking like a news class where like we literally make a newscast for Michigan State University. It's called Focal Point. All of the students that are reporters and anchors are encouraged to use their cell phone to do their stories.
Huh.
Most don't use cameras anymore. Your cell phone, if you're a reporter for News 7, News 6, whatever, half of those stories are done on their fucking phones, bro. It is like, it's crazy how much the technology that we kind of grew up with and started to like have has become the standard. So a podcast is a standard now. It really is. And it's not so much about like the definitive way to do a podcast is how do you make a podcast that's interesting and give it a format to continue to have that. That's kind of what they really teach, you know?
Wild. So wild to see like what becomes in general. I don't know. It's just wild. It's wild. It's wild to be here. Like I'm still tripping out about it because it's like, you mean you could? I mean, I probably couldn't have because I can't get it. I could get into MSU, but it would take me a long time and a lot of work. But it's just wild to think that like a Big Ten university that's like, you know, very like, just I don't know. It's interesting. Like I guess it goes back to like even like when I started booking shows. I remember Bridget telling me like you have gotten further just doing it because you wanted to and you figured it out than people who went to Ferris to learn like band management or like any of the things that you do to put on shows. Like you just figured it out and did it. Same with this. Like almost anything I've done in this industry of however big or insignificant, I just figured it out. So the fact that like the idea of like Ferris has a bit of like a music management course or like these other things or MSU's doing like the thing like you're talking about, it fucking blows my mind because it's like the whole thing about, and maybe it's just the genre, the scene, whatever. I don't know. Like it's always been more of like you get in because you wanted it. You figured it out.
Boots
it's
to the
not
ground.
Because there was, yeah, like it's just wild to me to know that like that's not everyone's entryway into it. Like you could just be like, oh, that sounds like a cool class. I'm going to take that and see what happens.
Yeah. University of Miami offers a master's in entertainment and booking. I mean, think about that one, dude. I saw that pop up in my feed and I was like, what? Just go to the venue and start booking bands and figuring out and fail a bunch of times. That's like you and I's perspective, but now they offer a master's in this. So,
but okay, like here's just two old men just burning into the void right now. Like as I'm literally looking at like the show posters I did, like I'm looking at the one like you and I did with 36 Crazy Fist tour.
Yep.
And it's like thinking of that tour and like, I mean, at that point, maybe you had kind of worked more with like booking a full tour where it's especially with bands not from here, like that weren't starting here. But it's like some of the shows you and I did where it's like, okay, we got to figure out flights. We got to figure out, you know, maybe the guarantee has to be a little bit shorter on this one because this market may not do as great. But like the other one, we can make up for it because like we can put a better show because it's on a better day. Like, you know, you figure these things out. I can't imagine going to a class, and maybe this is just my bias of being old and just kind of like this is how I feel like I see people, kids, quote unquote, interacting now, where it's like I couldn't imagine going to a class like that, getting, you know, a degree or whatever adjacent to these things, going into a venue or whatever in a real life situation, and then like that first show that just fucking eats shit, and you're like, bro, the money's not there. Like your class probably doesn't teach you to then go to your ATM and go fucking pay the band yourself, or like like I can't imagine I just can't imagine like when you're in that situation that inevitably if you book shows or been in a band that's played those shitty shows like I have too, like been on both sides of it, where it's like, oh fuck, I thought I was getting the money. It's like I couldn't imagine being like, well, I did everything that I was supposed to do for that I learned. Like I just can't see how you overcome that after like because it's like a class is a class. It's not, I hate to say it, it's not real life. So it's like when you're thrust into a failure in real life, how does the school side of things teach you to deal with that?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Because I feel like that goes back to the integrity and just like understanding, like, I don't know. I mean, like, and then I'm even thinking like, okay, like, is there like a small part at this course in Miami where like, you know, I know you and I went through this with one of the shows we did. Band comes in, we didn't sell any tickets. What the fuck do you mean you didn't sell any tickets? I didn't sell any tickets. There was fucking 5 of you. You couldn't each at least buy one.
Yeah, right. Nothing. Zero.
Dude, fuck you. You're opening. I don't give a fuck. You didn't give a fuck, so I don't give a fuck. You're opening.
Yep.
Like just things like that. Like I don't know. It's just so wild to me to think that like I don't know. I'm just like instantly transported to like all the worst things that ever happened booking shows or being in a band, and I'm like, how does a school teach you and prepare you for that? School barely taught me and prepared me for real fucking life. How does it prepare you for this whole other anomaly of dealing with other people and egos and shit?
Yep. Nope. You're right, man. You're absolutely right. It's mind blowing. It really is super mind blowing.
Jesus Christ. God damn, I don't even know where to go now. You're just like, I'm just like lost in that right now. Just like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me?
That's great, dude.
I feel like I would be a little remiss to kind of not at this point bring up something I don't think I've really ever talked to you about, but I'll kind of like this will be like one of my last questions, so you can put your kid to bed and have some time with your wife. Being shit, what is it now? Almost it's over 25 years now of being no life heartsick at this point, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it weird to know, even though, and this isn't like a backhanded compliment, this is just I would ask this in general, but is it wild to know that you have been around long enough that you can have influenced other people at this point? Like you have been around so long that someone that could have seen you when they were 14, like 15 years ago, is now in a band that you have influenced on a local level that maybe has gone on to do something, you know, bigger than yourself. Is it kind of a trip to realize you're that far into what you've done that you've inspired like a new generation of people to do this?
Yeah. It took me a while to accept that. It took me a while to accept that as a compliment. I think for a while, my brain, the way that it thinks, kind of took that as like, I've failed. I'm not as good. And they were better. And that's why they're at where they're at. And we can take Andy from the Ghost Inside, who used to be in For the Fallen Dreams. If you ask Andy, he will tell you No Life is a huge reason why I started playing music. And it's the reason why For the Fallen Dreams would play, right? And it took me a while to like accept that compliment as a compliment. In my mind, sometimes it would just be like, damn, those guys made it and I didn't, in some weird way, right? But that's not true at all. That's not really what it is. I think where we're at now is a great spot, and we're only getting better and bigger. And sure, it's taken a while, but I would rather have taken this road, you know, in hindsight, you know. But it is wild to think that we have influenced people like that, and I am that to some people. It's hard to accept because I don't feel my age. I don't think about we've been together for 25 years, that we've done things that most bands. It's wild to me to think that we can tour with a band like Nonpoint, never have been in that type of popularity the way that they have been, and still tour at the same level as them, and never once having to have anybody come and talk to us to tell us how to be a touring band. Not once. Day 2, they were like, yeah, we're just going to leave you guys be. You don't need the stage manager. You know what you're doing. And we've had that happen to us time and time again. The few times that we've gone out to tour with bigger bands, the one compliment always is, you guys are more professional than some of the professional bands that we've been on. You know, and then when I hear bands like there's Let It Rot from Lansing, they're kind of like getting up and going. Accuser of the Brethren, they're gonna getting up and going. Assume Nothing, you know, Of Virtue. Every one of those bands credits us as a band in influencing them in some way. And it's pretty wild to think about that. It's really wild to think about that. And it's also wild to see these guys that I've seen literally grow up as kids become the artists that they are. It's wild seeing Andy from The Ghost Inside being where he is. When I remember seeing Andy as a pudgy 13-year-old kid who didn't know how to play drums. It's wild seeing David Gunn from King A10 and Eugene be who they are now and have them show up to our shows and say that we influenced them. It's weird seeing or being on a record with In Heart's Wake and having them credit us for influencing how much they appreciate Michigan. It's wild. It's crazy. It doesn't sink in, but I've learned to accept it to a degree for sure. And it feels good. It's nice. It's nice to be able to do that. Like you at 40, in my 40s, I'm starting to finally accept certain things and kind of be able to sit with those things and enjoy them for what they really are. And I think that's a great question, because that's one of those things that I'm finally being able to enjoy rather than see as a sour point and being like, whoa, we didn't get to where they're at. There's no time limit on this stuff. There really isn't. And I think that's what my 40s have taught me, is there's no time limit, but there are things that you should accept, you know? And I it's crazy being that. It's crazy being that to some people, having people reach out and be like, dude, I loved your band. It's the reason why I did this. It's wild to me.
I think the thing, as like I said, you're the last one for this, unless I do one more now to replace the Ken episode, but I may not. It's been a trip to kind of experience, and it's something I talk about quite a bit on the show now, that I kind of came to the conclusion of through doing psychedelics, but this idea that we exist in multiple planes of existence, not only for ourselves, but for others. And the thing that's a trip is like, this completes my 500th episode week. So I have been between going to the Refuse show a couple of weeks ago, between going to the Killswitch show a week ago, where I did the interview. Like, I was back in the room where I did an interview with JB. And then I was in the other room when I went to hang out with Joel and some of the dudes that I was in with Justin, an hour apart, when and then basically seeing, and like, it was weird. Like, I caught a moment as I was filming the end of Heartache from Josh's like tech space and just kind of getting the crowd. And then I just saw today, I was like, I feel like I took this exact same video the last time this song was playing. And then that memory popped up actually today. And then the world fucking done. And I've seen Killswitch since, but I've not seen them back in that room. And so there's been a lot of things between going to the Refuse show, thinking about, you know, this is the farewell tour for them, thinking about when I got to have Dennis on, like, couldn't believe that happened. Seeing Sergio in Quicksand and being like, I remember having Sergio on, and some issues surrounding that conversation initially. And just like, you know, I'm doing this 500th episode thing, and I'm already kind of living through past guests and past experiences through doing the podcast as long as I have. But then also, like, I'm kind of celebrating the milestone now, but it's going to be another month or two before I even get to do it, like, and put it out. And then that'll be a whole nother, where it's like, oh, now it's finally here. And it's kind of the closest thing I kind of think I've really realized is as close to being like a band where it's like, okay, like, we're putting out a record, and oh, I remember when like this was a demo and where it started. And, you know, you kind of reflect when it's all done. And as you're putting it together, like, you're excited about it because it's new for you. But then by the time it comes out for everyone else, it could have been another 6 months to a year and then you're kind of getting to relive all of it all over again. It's kind of a very unique position to be in when you're doing something in it. And I'll say this for myself, in a very quote unquote creative space, to kind of just exist in these different planes for people. And like I said earlier, having people, because of like the Deftones popularity, going through something that I did when I first started the show. And I was just like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. This seems like a cool idea. Let's just do it and see what happens. And now people are like, oh, you got this wrong. And I'm like, I'm sorry that 8.5 years ago I said the wrong thing. Sorry. Like, it's just been a trip to kind of see people going back through all these different iterations of eras, quote unquote, of the show. And like I said, because in the last like 2.5, 3 weeks, it's been little things that kind of remind me of the journey of the whole thing as I'm on the journey to 500 and all that 9 years. Like, it'll be a probably freak out next year and be like 10 fucking years of doing this thing. Is it even worth it? I don't know. This is 10 years of me sitting in a room staring at a computer for however long, like wild.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, it's just a thing where like, I know you're able to kind of able to probably navigate that as well, just from a different creative perspective of, like we talked about earlier, like the name change and this is great. Oh, no, this is out of fashion. So like, what are you doing? And then you're like, all right, I guess maybe that's not who we are anymore. Or maybe it's time to change. Like, I did with the name change for this. And then, different members come in. I had a co-host. Like, there's different things, but the constant is kind of you and I, or, at least with your band, it's you, Jared and Waylon. But there's something to kind of be said about sticking through it and just kind of not giving up. And when it would have been way easier to, or taking cuts along the way and stuff like that, and kind of the integrity of the work. And to me, like, that was something when I was kind of thinking about, guests and stuff like that. It's like, it's not necessarily anything we've talked about, but I think we have talked about throughout this whole thing. It's just kind of who we are as people, the integrity we have and the work ethic, and kind of how this isn't just something we do because we want to, it's something we have to do. There's just something in us innately that's like, we have to do this. And it may not bring big success, but it's never been about that. It's just about what it gives you. So I kind of knew you were going to be the perfect person to kind of tail end all of this, because you have been around and championed just about every facet of anything I've done in this industry, from booking shows to I never really knew you when I was in the band that I was in, just because I was so far away. But, I know there were times, like, I think when I had told you, I think we were playing with like Remembering Never or whatever, you're like, those guys are great. Da, 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 like, all this kind of shit. Or I would play with somebody where I'm like, oh my God, it's really crazy. Like, we're getting to play like the Orbit Room for a Battle of the Bands. And you're like, dude, it's cool. Even if it's like a stupid show like that, like, just, like, to be on the stage where, like, at the time for me doing that, like, Deftones had just played. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm on the same fucking stage that the Deftones were on. And like, getting to experience and share all the things over the course of me doing anything in the music industry, you've always been a part of it. So it seems a bit apropos to have you be a part of this, 500 episodes later, because you always love telling the story of sitting in your van with my shitty microphone.
I remember. And it's been an honor and a pleasure to see you grow, man. It really has. It really, really has. You're definitely a pioneer, and I think people should definitely be influenced by you, because it says a lot when the world is teaching classes about podcasts, and you've been doing it longer than the classes have been around. So, I think that's great. And you're right. I'll end my bit with it being very simple. You said it best. This isn't a want anymore. This is a need. I have to do this. I've thought about this time and time again, sitting at home by myself, in my office, at work, in the van when we're on tour and I'm sitting by myself. Who would I be without this? And I don't know. And it's past wanting to do this now. Now it is a have to. I do not see my life without this. I just don't. I don't. So I'm glad you said have to, because that's really what it is to me now.
Yeah, it feels very weird. Like, it's something I've thought about doing, is taking like a month off just so people can kind of process like everything I dumped on and then just give myself like a little bit of a break. Because I realized that's the other thing. Like you kind of hit on it a little bit ago of like maybe reassessing what you're doing so you don't drive yourself and other people fucking crazy in the process of, I got to do this and I got to do this and I got to do this. Like that's the other thing, therapy taught me was like, you got to set boundaries and you got to like give yourself some like grace to like have a life, do some other things and satiate these other facets of yourself. And it's hard because like, if I could, I would love to like, sometimes I see like great opportunities to like have someone on. I'm like, that's when I'm at work and I can't even take the time to do it because like my job's too crazy and I don't want to like schedule something and then day I'll be like, because I've had this happen where you're like, oh, I have to cancel because like we're just in the shit right now at work and I can't take the time off that I said I could. So it's like it's a thing where it's like I'm proud. I'm glad that I've learned how to navigate this and my actual life and a personal life and other things to find more of a balance. But I'll definitely say like if there's anyone that I look to where I'm like, I just feel like I should be doing more, I could do more, or I could do this better or whatever. I look to you and I'm like, man, you've slowed down and you used to be the maniac that was like 1,000 miles in each direction with everything you were doing. And I'm like, man, that's going to be such a colossal burnout. And I hit that several times myself over the whole course of doing this. I'm sure I probably will again. But yeah, not like, yeah, maybe like the end of the goal of like this busy ass thing of what I'm doing now is like just take a month off and just like enjoy the moment of like hitting a milestone of 500 and the nine-ish years almost of doing this and just being like, all right, I have 500 things you can listen to here for a month. Just find a couple and be like, this one was cool. Probably haven't heard it in a while. Go check it out and just take like a month off. I say that and I know I'm not going to.
Enjoy it, man. Sit back and enjoy it for like a week.
Yeah, that'll probably be more what I do is sit back for a week and then I'm like, well, I need to kind of have my like weird therapy thing where I just like talk to people and kind of bounce weird ideas I'm having off of other people and be like, what do you think? I think that's like the one thing that I still latch onto with Marin is like, it just feels like it's a therapy session where he's trying to work through his own shit with somebody who's never met him before. And I feel like at times I do the same thing where I'm like, this week I was really thinking about accountability. What do you think about accountability?
Yeah, that's therapy, 100%.
Yeah. Last question for you. Where can anyone find you or anything you would like to plug online?
Easy, man. Heartsick.us. Go to our website. It'll take you everywhere. Pretty much everywhere is Heartsick Band. But if you go to YouTube, it is Heartsick Official. So
there we go. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this and enjoy the rest of your evening with your wife and kid.
Thank you, buddy. You be safe. It's great talking to you. And congratulations on 500 episodes, my man.
So that was my conversation with Alfonso. Want to thank him once again for taking the time. And I know through both what you heard there at the end and through some of the text messages, because I sent him part of the show synopsis I was working on for the show notes, because I was like, do I have part of this right, or does this sound right to you? I don't want to misrepresent you in any way, shape, or form. And, he was, as he said at the end of this episode, basically that, he was, so honored to be a part of this and to be a part of like the milestone and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, as you literally heard me say in the intro, like, how could I not have someone that has been a part of my journey through this whole fucking industry, like in whatever capacity or whatever that actually looks like? But I mean, I remember booking a show at the Loft in Lansing, and it's like, he helped me get that. Like when I was booking shows and kind of took on like a manager role for a band here locally, I went to him for some connects to like help my band get some shows, out in Detroit and some other areas. Like Alfonso kind of taught me the ropes of how to run a show and how to like get in touch with your local bands and like things to do. And, I learned from other people along the way, but Alfonso really was sort of that parental figure in that sense of like, he didn't gatekeep anything. The information that he had earned and all the context that he had that he honestly could have kept to himself and been like most people that I have met in this industry on behind the scenes stuff, where it's about me and it's what can I get and how can I get over for myself, maybe for my people, but that everyone just kind of forgets you and doesn't want to help you as much as they are faux nice to you. And I think that that's such a refreshing thing. Like, I can't honestly think of anybody that knows Alfonso that would have a bad thing to say about him. And for someone that's been around in the scene for 20 plus fucking years, like, there's no way that you would have that reputation if it was built on lies, essentially. This dude is one of the most humblest, most caring people I've ever met. And to be a part of an industry this long where it has done nothing but kind of break him down, for him to still have the optimism that he does, for the passion that he does, for not only what he does in his band, but just for life and the creating of music and being a part of it. A lot of lesser people would have packed it up and called it a day when they went through remotely any of the struggles or hardships that Alfonso and the guys have gone through. You know what? As I'm sitting here right now, I'll call a spade a spade. A lot of them did. And a lot of them maybe were better, had better connects, had whatever. But the one thing they didn't fucking have was the drive. They didn't have the drive or the passion that Alfonso and the Heartsick dudes had and have. And that's why they're not around. Alfonso and the guys have also had some lineup changes with drummers over the years. But I will definitely say to keeping the same 3 core members of the band together for that long as well, you still don't even see it now. And I think that, again, speaks to who Alfonso is, as well as Waylon and Jared and now Barack as well. But it's so commendable. And I know that this isn't, to a lot of people maybe listening to this, they're going to be like, I don't know who this band is. But I hope you take the time to listen to it. I hope you take the time and you enjoyed it. I hope you learned about why I love Alfonso as a person. Why I'm excited to talk to him. What little bit I get to when I get to, because he's just so all over the fucking place. He lives as passionately as he performs on stage, and it's incredible to see it because I don't know how he even does it. And I think a lot of times it's just he doesn't know any other way. And I think being a dad, I think I have seen has changed him. And he's finally starting to understand the thing that we've all been telling him for many years, which is you need to slow down, man. You need to enjoy what you're doing. Not to say that you haven't been, but you need to enjoy it in a little bit different way. You need to set some boundaries. You need to understand that you don't always have to go a million miles an hour, that sometimes you can kind of just cruise around and just enjoy it. And I think having the kid has allowed him to do that and in such a different, interesting way. And this is the Alfonso that I'm excited to see now, because it's like, whereas before everything, the passion and everything he has inside of him was built from and driven by himself and all these things. But now he's got, as I sort of was saying in the intro about like what representation means and how important is it to you to see yourself. I feel like if I were in Alfonso's shoes, but if I'm thinking about it down the road more, where from a kid's perspective, if I see this, my dad doing his thing, and that he never like, well, I have a kid, so I can't be in a band anymore. Well, I have to work all these jobs, so I can't do the thing that, you know, makes it all worth it for me. I feel like that's just got to inspire, that will inspire his kid at some point down the road to pursue whatever he's interested in. And I think Alfonso will probably nurture the shit out of that when whatever his kid ends up being into will be. And that has me excited. I know I talk all the time about having kids on here, and I don't want any, but I love seeing it for my friends who do, because I think there's just something really interesting about what it does to someone and how it changes them. And especially when it's people I've known for a long time, like to see the evolution of them and the growth of them once they become parents, I think is really interesting. All of that said, let's start wrapping up this episode. If you would like to keep up with Heartsick, you can go over to heartsick.us. Otherwise, it's Heartsick Band on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you would like to keep up with Alfonso, you can find him at Alfonso Civile on Instagram. And I know that basically the guys are always living in the studio writing new music. They just had a new single called Break the Curse that just came out. The music video has been doing really well. I know Waylon, their bass player, directed it, and Alfonso produced it. But I know the guys are probably also working on newer music, which will probably eventually end up being their latest album. So keep up with them and what's going on with them, and show them some love. And I can't thank you all enough for listening to almost a full week at this point of episodes. If you would like to email me at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com with guest suggestions or just anything from the show maybe you want to discuss a little bit more, would love to do that. You can also keep up with me at BrewSpeakPod on all your social media platforms of choice. Rate, review, subscribe. You know why that is important. Please do such. Whatever you are able to do, wherever you are able to do it, it's greatly appreciated. And speaking of appreciation, got to show appreciation to Rockabilia. Go to rockabilia.com. Use our code BREWtally at checkout. Take 10% off your total purchase order. They have so many things in their online store. You've heard me say it almost for every single day now for this past week. Just go there. Pick up something. Use the code. Save some money. It's that easy. And for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has listened to this full week. Like I said, I probably will re-drop the Ken Susi episode tomorrow when you're listening to this. I'm not doing a new intro, outro for that one. That'll just exist as it does, and it'll come back out to complete my full 500th episode week the way that I had originally intended it to be. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you to everybody who has been along with the journey, whether it be a couple of episodes, one episode, for years. It's truly something as I look back to just literally everyone that I have had on this week. There's something in each conversation. There's something in each person that I consider a really good friend that I think speaks to everything this show is, and I want it to be. You have someone like Alfonso who has consistently, over the 20-something years I've known him, just been so fucking driven in spite of every obstacle, and he never takes the easy way out of, there's never an excuse. It's always just, we'll have to figure out a different way. You look at someone like Dale. Dale talked about when we were doing our episode that he, really wanted to break into the touring industry. Well, I'm here to say, because I wasn't able to say this during when I had finished the intro outro for that, but when I'm doing this one, I can say now that you will see Dale on 2 really fucking big tours. First one that he's getting to do is big boy touring in a shed with Bloodywood opening on the Baby Metal tour that's coming around this summer. So you can go see Dale and see him living out a dream that he's had, and now he's getting to do it. I can also say now that he also will be out on the road after that with the Chae doing merch. So you're going to see a giant friendly man when you go buy merch from some of my friends. And I can't wait to see him and support him on his journey through this. You go to the 2 conversations I had with both Tom and Pat. 2 people who worked very hard to get to arguably kind of the pinnacle of touring and what you wanted. Tom with joining one of his favorite bands growing up and getting to be a part of this. And then, as we kind of talked about in the episode and in past ones, about wanting to put his stamp on his era of the band. And I think he definitely did that. And I think he's able to do that and continue to do that and share that experience now with the multiple bands that he's in, with the people that he's in with now, and he's reconnected with why he fell in love with the genre of music in the first place. To Patrick, who, arguably was in one of the largest bands right now in the scene, and both of those guys knew that they needed to step away for the betterment of themselves. And it's a thing where sometimes happiness for yourself doesn't look like you thought it did, because I think from afar everyone would be like, oh, being in these big bands, being in this band that means something as you were growing up, that's what happiness is, and it's not. And so I hope people listen to those 2 conversations and really take away the understanding of happiness looks like something different, and you have to figure it out for yourself. No one can tell you what it is, and you have to live your life for you. And sometimes that's hard, and I think those 2 did a really, really tremendous job of doing that. And I love being able to have them be able to tell their story and share it with me and with all of you. So I hope you find inspiration in that. Going to Ken Susi, a lot of that in the beginning that went super viral, that wasn't necessarily the intention for the episode. It just happened to be that he needed to get that off his chest and felt like he could do that with me. But I also look at that and I realize that is the same thing, where it's like when you're not happy in a situation and you need to move on, and sometimes you need to make hard decisions about speaking out for other people who aren't able to be able to kind of take the brunt of whatever it is that you're going to do and take on, because let's face it, Ken caught a lot of shit for joining the band, but he fucking owned up to it. And he was there to talk about why he did it and what he was hoping would happen. And then when it got bad, he didn't want to be quiet anymore. And he knew it was a bad situation. And I think in today's world of a lot of abuse that people suffer and go through, I think it's really commendable that Ken was able to not only admit his own faults and things where he's learned to grow, I think, as a person, not professionally, but as a person, but also that it didn't compromise him professionally, that he wasn't willing to do that and he wasn't going to stand by and let someone literally and figuratively abuse someone else that he had come to know and learn as a friend. I think that story needs to be told. And then I have one of my I would say my golden goose of sorts, the one that anytime I post, it gets eyes and ears on it, my buddy Andrew. And I went back and listened to some of the episodes, and I kind of alluded to this real quickly in the intro, outro to that episode of just, I went back and listened to where the first time he came on the show and just the wide-eyed optimism of like, oh, if I could do this and I'm just happy to do these things, to talking to him now. And I will say the passion hasn't changed. I think he just understands more of what he wants out of it. And he's not willing to compromise himself or anything like that. And he takes every opportunity he's given and just excels and crushes it. And it's so deserving to go back 6-7 years or so of this show and hear, well, I just would really like to write with Dance Gavin. And, they're one of my favorite bands. And, getting like, he's doing it. And the band's kind of at a level bigger than they've ever been. And to see my friend the other day playing a show where he gets to be a fan of his own band that he's in now and share that fandom and that fanaticism with everyone else that's in that room. Man, it was so fucking cool. And I've been along for so much of it, for everybody's journey, literally almost everybody's journey in these things, these stories that they're telling on this show. It has been such an absolute privilege to witness it firsthand and to be a part of it, even just from watching. And that's because of this show. I couldn't have asked for a better week of guests. And the fact that the lead-in episodes to this were crazy guests that, I probably at other points would have been like, this is the 500th guest. This is the 500th guest. Man, I am truly blessed at what this show has afforded me. The connection to strangers who have become friends, to traveling at least our world, the U.S., traveling the U.S. and still being able to run into people who listen to the show, to hear my friends talk about how they listen to an episode of the show and how much it meant to them while they're on the road. It's crazy. So, thank you once again. And I hope, at the very least, maybe this will inspire you to start your own creative journey, whatever that is. Because I would love for someone to have heard this at any point in the history of this show and been like, you know what? I realized I could do whatever it is. And I can't wait to hear maybe the stories that you share and you tell, and maybe you'll email me or something and let me know that I was a part of fuck it, yeah, I can do this too. Because I promise you I am nothing special. And I feel so insanely lucky that I just did what I heard the people I was inspired by constantly saying, chase whimsies, just make the thing, just do it. You never know where it's going to take you. So, for the Brewtallyspeaking podcast, I am your host, John, and I will see you all the next time. It'll probably be with Mike Terry. I'm probably going to wait a little bit after dropping this, maybe even a full month, because this is essentially a month and a half's worth of episodes all being released at once. I'm tired of looking at the screen. I'm tired of being stuck at this computer to get all this work done that it will take to run this as smoothly as I want it. So I'll probably take a little bit of time off to hang out with my wife and just enjoy some time not doing the show. But the next episode's guest is going to be Mike Terry of Volumes, as well as Fire from the Gods. That was a great chat. Looking forward to getting that one out to you. I will see you all next time.